Let's start with
Yeah, right.
That's great. That's a great question, Kate. First of all, how is labor and materials impacting what you guys do on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's a daily battle. Materials for sure, and labor, I mean, there's such a shortage here. There's for sure it will impact us for the next foreseeable future. We're still getting daily increases, at least weekly, if not daily, increases from our subcontractors.
Meaning,
Supply, it would be all materials and labor.
okay, so daily, you're getting people coming to you and
Yeah.
saying, hey, it's gonna cost more almost every day.
Yeah, yesterday we had, so we have two specific garage doors we're using, and in the last 30 days, I should say, we've had a 40% increase on one garage door, and then we just got another 40% increase on the other ones. It just seems like they don't care. They're working, as far as from what we're hearing, is they're working 24 hours a day and can't keep people working for them, and just don't care if they have any more business.
Just the national suppliers?
Yeah.
The manufacturer. Right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not running at full capacity because they don't have enough people to fulfill the needs.
So it sounds like it's a labor, like fundamentally, as you go through the layer, not only is it labor for you on site, but then it's labor down the supply chain as well.
Yeah, so the supply chain issues are not just from materials, they're from a lot of labor, like unemployment has an effect on that. I think the other thing that's really important that people are really focused, like media headlines right now, like lumber is plummeting, right? And that was like the big driving force and a lot of cost increase, and buyers are like, well, you know, your lumber costs are going down, so are your house costs gonna go down? And the answer is no, because like John just said, there's literally daily increases from materials to labor and all of that stuff. So when people hit you with that right now, you know, like you could really do a good job of managing our expectation that headline about lumber is only a small part of the problem.
COVID screwed the supply chains nationally.
Worldwide though. It is worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide. And it's going to have a trickling effect for a long time of just trying to get supplies, which might create some innovation, you know, people trying different things because other things are available than what they're used to. But yeah, the supplies and the cost of supplies that we take nationally, I think will continue to impact us in a negative way, meaning prices being more
That's really a
expensive
good
and hard to
point,
get hold of.
because what's gonna happen with COVID resurfacing now, starting to take, you know, you're just hearing about these astronomical numbers of increasing cases again. That's gonna affect the supply chain still.
So what do you think, what's the delay in timeline of you going from pad to occupancy? Because it used to be at least 6 months to build a house, roughly, from pad to occupancy. Is that roughly what it was, or is I off on that? And then what is it now?
It was faster than that, especially for a process like this, homes. But yeah, for the typical home, I would say 2 years ago, you were looking at like 4 month turnaround time. And now you're looking at like a 7-month turnaround time.
And then you've also got a lead time to wait because of the amount of permits St. Louis City is dealing with.
How's this gonna have that? So is the permit process easing up a little bit or not?
So right now, garage doors is our biggest problem. So it's taking us 16 to 18 weeks to get garage doors. Like the garage doors that we're ordering right now won't be here until October or November, December.
So that's not keeping you from getting occupancy though, is it?
Essentially what we did is we built that into our process, and that's why in February we decided to go all spec homes. So which has helped us because now we build a backlog of 2 months worth of homes that haven't started, and so we basically ordered the garage doors 2 months before we even pour the pad, and then hopefully they show up by the time it's done and ready to go. Which it has been, but here are problems just this week again. It's just gonna be issues.
So
I have a question. So most of the builders are moving to a spec model. You know, what will have to happen in order for that to go back to working like with what's gonna have to happen for that to go back into that type of thing, or is there no plan for that?
Going to like pre-sales, you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, we want to go back as soon as possible. It's really just the supply. If we can get garage doors and windows and all the building materials here I mean, rock on the exterior of our homes is such a problem right now too. It's taking about 16 weeks as well. And they're not even giving us a time frame on the exterior rock. So it's just crazy. And as soon as we can figure out that and start getting a normal supply, we're gonna head back in that direction. Well, and also some of our more expensive products, we're opening up a new community that's gonna be starting in the 700s, 800s, which is extremely high for us and our normal comfort level. And we're gonna be doing some pre-sales in those communities with escalation clause, sorry.
To answer your question, you just need to consider what pushed the builders to go that direction. It was the uncertainty of what prices would be, their cost of materials, and being able to obtain those materials and keeping up with the demand. There's definitely a shift in the market right now. The demand is going down and there is more inventory coming on. So that aspect of it will start to ease things up. But if builders can't feel like they know when they'll be able to get supplies or have at least a rough idea of what that supply will cost them, they're not going to feel comfortable signing a contract at a fixed price or letting a customer pick things if they can't guarantee they can get those things.
And not only that, they can't even guarantee that the cost on what they purchased it for is still going to be that price once they get it, right? So then you're like, I'm fixing you have a supply chain, at the very end, you're gonna fix the price and then hope that nothing else changes in the middle. That's not a good business strategy.
But it will come back. Time frame, no one knows for sure. My gut instinct, I would say like maybe next spring, you start to see more of that. Maybe things are more predictable by then. But for now, you've got a whole bunch of builders that have been building homes that were not sold, and they're all coming on the market now. So there is going to be plenty to choose from. But for that person that wants to pick everything out themselves, they're gonna have to wait.
Rachel?
Our builder is actually still taking custom clients. There are some helpful things that we're putting on the contract for both the buyer and the builder, but we are still doing custom homes. We have some things that-
And that's a great conversation too, on reading and understanding that contract, because I think every realtor in Washington County probably needs a refresher on the new construction contract, or at least the ones that are most widely used, because I think most builders have a version of theirs, or they use the state form. So I think that's a great point too that was brought up.
Who do you work with? Web Custom Homes is my builder.
Okay.
Is our builder. No, but exactly what they're saying is absolutely true, even with, and especially with it, everything has to be ordered super early. There's still price fluctuations on a weekly basis. I mean, it's a tedious process, but we are getting people through it.
I talked to Craig Wagner, the UAR attorney, a few months ago about adding a clause into the Utah contracts, because we didn't have any clause, still don't have any clauses in there to allow for price increases. And so a lot of builders were saying, I've got to raise the price, or I can't build your house. But we just don't have that language in the contract to protect us. And I think they're coming up with some language and they will be adopting that in the future. But the big builders are using their own contracts. I think have already provided for that, which is a good thing. Because we need that in contracts. The prices are changing so fast that they could not protect themselves without doing price increases.
Well, and on the same token, right, is that we have fiduciary duty to all of our clients, not just the buyers, right? And so as business owners and builders and realtors, we need the language in there protecting ones that are doing a lot of the upfront risk. Because I'm not familiar with this number, what percentage of home sales in Washington County are new builds? Do you guys know?
That's a great question.
So part of the problem though is that the builders don't all record on MLS, which Ents Homes does, thank you.
Well, you can look at permits pulled for
Right.
the greater St. George
So you can
area
go permits.
and compare that to number of sales.
And then with a lag time of 5 to 6 months, just to kind of think, okay, if these are the
Yeah, and we're
permits,
not putting everything on the MLS.
but you got a lot on there. a lot of-
Right, it's the homes that we sold in January, basically not to mess up our own appraisals. We haven't been putting on, the ones that we pre-sold, we're almost through our pre-sold homes at this point. We have a couple more left, but those ones that we are not putting on the MLS.
One time we heard that we in Washington County had a shortage of homes, of about 2,700 homes. Is that still something that you guys understand it to be true? Is that a factor in your acquisition of land and building, that sort of thing in the future?
It's definitely something we look at. We look at the MLS and see how many homes are on there. I didn't look at it this week, but we're probably in the 600 mark, which, so it's gone up a couple hundred in the last month. Yeah, it's gone up a lot. And we're helping with that. We've added, this month, I think we've added 20 homes, which is great. We're excited, and we have another 20 for next month and another 20 the next month. So hopefully the market keeps going the way it is. Yeah, as far as what we're planning for, we're kind of hoping it continues, but we're also cautiously optimistic right now on what is happening. Like Kate said, it's definitely seen a little bit of a low in our traffic to our model homes through July. I'm sure most of you have seen that too, phone calls coming in, leads coming in, which we thought maybe due to how hot it is, how hot it's been, people going on vacation that haven't been able to go on vacation, and then also just the buyer fatigue of all the multiple offers and everything that's been going on. People just are sick of that. So for us, we actually 2 weeks ago, we did an email campaign where we're not doing multiple offers anymore. We're just first come, first serve, and try to help buyers get out of that buyer fatigue.
I think that another answer to your question though is there's gonna be certain or price brackets that are underserved. And that's gonna be really tricky to address with all of this cost increase.
Yeah.
And a lot of land costs have gone up a big amount, and that hasn't reflected yet.
So that's something I wanted to touch on with what Rachel said. There are a lot of builders out there that would love to build your client a custom home. Going to see more of them doing contracts that are like a cost plus, so that they have a fluctuating price. They just know the builder's fee is, you know, a set amount or set percentage. Buyers taking on the risk of the fluctuating costs and time frames. There is a lot of that still out there, but it's getting to be harder and harder to make that happen because those builders don't have huge subdivisions and huge plots of land to develop. There's very little to pick off right now, you know, very few little lots to choose from to do these onesie, twosie houses. And the cost to replace land and buy new land has gone through the roof. That's the big question of if that will come down ever and when. That's a really big question.
I think if you go back in time and you watch California's development from the coast inland, right, where there was this massive rush in the early 2000s of going from the coast out into Ontario and things like that. It reminds me of this time where you have to be able to develop massive tracts of land to keep costs in control and keep costs in line. So less and less small builders. The longer and longer this goes through, at least from my perspective, that do you guys see the same thing?
Speaking of cost bracket, do you guys have any plans of some lower income, more high density housing at all coming to St. George? Have you talked to the city? Is there any ideas of that happening in the near future?
Citywide, I don't know, but one thing I will tell you is it's really hard to develop that because when you buy land, typically it's just agricultural land, and the cities have very few spots that are actually pre-planned for high density. And so to go find a piece of land and then get the zoning approved to be high density, even if it's just townhomes, I'm not talking like multi-story apartments or something, it is really hard. You basically have to buy out in the middle of nowhere so that no one's fighting you over it. Because if you're near anyone, they don't want to live near that.
Yeah.
Everyone wants affordable housing. They just don't want to live next door to it.
No,
Yeah, they all like the idea of apartments in Warner Valley, right?
And so then we're talking about land and acquisition. Can you tell us where your subdivisions are gonna go in so that we can give our buyers some information?
Let's start with John and then just move this direction. Maybe you can just kind of give us a brief overview of that.
Yeah, so
That's a long rabbit hole, by the way. I don't necessarily wanna go down
We
that.
got harder questions, so let's.
That's a great question to get asked, which is a good question. We could get sidetracked for like an hour down that one, but.
10-year plan.
Yeah.
So I'll just stick to what we have coming up in the next 6 months. So, basically we're in the DeBarrio area. It's awesome. People love it out there. I don't know if you've taken your clients out there, but yeah, everyone that's come in there, it's been really good. People have really liked it, like the views out there. And we have 3 communities out there, and a 4th one coming up in the next year. So going from there, we have down on the south side of town, we have our Sandridge community, which is priced pretty good. And then we also have a floor price product that's gonna be coming out. We're gonna be doing like a smaller 2-story home, kind of similar to what Salisbury is doing there, in that same area off of River Road as well as off of Washington Dam Road. And we hope to be starting the one off Washington Dam Road in hopefully September. We'll actually start pouring pads there. So we're definitely excited about that. It's coming online right, perfect timing for us to have some lower price product coming in on. So there we also have our community. It's right next, SNS is right next to us. It's great prices and good location right next to the river. Pocket Mesa up in the ledges, great prices up there as well.
I guess first I'll just clarify, there's no such thing as cadence construction.
I made that up. And Colin is also the mob boss over here too. I had asked him, I was like, how do you describe yourself to people you know? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Everybody has like 5 things we do.
I'm a newbie here, but would you guys mind just like telling us who you are? And
Okay, yeah. I don't, but we want to go back to that for Jackie too, but that might actually, now that Troy's here and maybe that actually.
Yeah,
be a
just
good spot.
tell us
Thank
who
you
you
for
are.
coming.
My name is John Ents with Ents Homes.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I'm Kate Ents. I do buy land and develop, recently finished a big townhome project in Ivans. Have other parcels that I have bought and plan to develop. I am not a general contractor. I work with a contractor called B&E Contracting. That's who I usually work with, and also MG Homes. There are developments happening on the fringes of every city, all over every nook and cranny is going to be developed. So Jackie, every little thing is gonna be some odd builder here or there. It's all been bought up and being developed. You'll see stuff everywhere. Long-term wise, I know myself, there's a lot of acreage to like the east of Sand Hollow Reservoir in Hurricane, between there and like Copper Rock Golf Course, a lot of activity happening over there that I'll be involved in. That's probably more of like a 3 to 5 year time frame. Further out in the future, a ton of land has been turned over and bought up in Warner Valley. That's probably more like a 10 to 15 year time frame.
As humble as it is. Thanks, dude. And Kate, appreciate you coming.
James?
James Sullivan with SNS Homes, and we kind of a 1 to 2 year picture. We're out in Bavaria with these guys. We are off of Washington Dam Road, getting started out there. We've got a ways to go out in Little Valley with the arbor still. We have a subdivision out in Ivans. We've got quite a few lots to go with there, got towards Kanta. And we've got a little ways to go more up there in the ledges. I guess kind of to looking at future growth, I would say you just kind of look at those areas, anywhere from exit 2 on the southern corridor, there's going to be a lot of growth there. The ledges still has a long way to go coming south from Winchester down through there. There's just a lot of land there. That's kind of the 2 areas is just really out south and then kind of going north on Highway 18. There's just more land than you think.
Do you think that project you were doing on SR 18 is gonna happen? Do you? Okay.
So it's just.
Everybody knows what that is,
Yeah.
it's south of Winchester.
The bridge to nowhere,
Ledges.
that
Northern Corridor Bridge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually not even Northern Corridor Bridge. It's just, we started the overpass. We're actually redesigning the whole thing, and we will be hopefully moving dirt there in about 6 months, but we're in the process with UDOT we're having to redesign and go under the highway instead of over.
Down there in that little valley right there, it's such a cool, beautiful place too. So doing that, because it's almost like it's views you don't actually even realize are potential views, right? So I love that piece of land.
It's a pretty area, but it's, like I say, we're probably a year away from building homes. Cool. We're back in the process of moving forward.
Awesome.
Right.
So my name is Troy Bellison, and for those of you that don't know me, apologize for my tire being late. I've been doing a little bit of cleanup from yesterday's rain on a project, but so I do a little bit of residential. I've been doing a little bit more commercial lately, multifamily, and then I sat on the city council. So from the entitlement side, I understand a little bit more of the process there, what needs to happen. When you talk about when Kate was talking about doing multifamily. You know, everybody likes the idea of affordable housing and multifamily,
Until it gets to city
but
council.
exactly, until it comes actually in front of the city council, and then you got the pitchforks out, right? It's tough to sometimes get the political arms to actually look at affordable housing, what needs to happen there. But there are things that can be done. I think we just need to kind of support some of those developments. And then that way your city councils and things will actually vote for them. But.
For as many people that don't like something, there is enough liking something, they just never hear from them.
Well, they don't show up, right?
They don't
So
show
if you
up.
had-
So
if
if
you
you
had
like
like-
something,
If you had a realtor board, if you had some of these real estate groups come in
That's this.
and actually
this is
show up
for-
to the city councils and say, hey, we need this.
You
here's
got
why we need it,"
70 right now, here we all can
Let's
support
all
their
go.
different.
You know,
goals.
it would
Let's all
help.
go take a part-time volunteer job with the permit department too.
There you go.
Just to see what it's like too.
You know, it would significantly help if you've got somebody in that room saying, hey, we need this and we want you to vote for it. Even if you're not from within the city, it helps if you're in those respective cities. Because when you got nothing but negative and you got a room full of negative, it makes it really tough for those guys to vote for it. And so I would just say from that perspective, it's helpful. You know, really where you need some of the multifamily is, you know, where your families are, right? You know, I'm building an apartment project right now that was way out there. Now it's surrounded by housing. And, you know, I'm getting a little bit of kickback where people are saying, well, geez, we've got more of these dang things. And they're certainly needed. I lived in an apartment for the first 7 years of my married life, right? My son's 22. Where the heck's he gonna go? He can buy a house, you know, but I don't want to export my son. So yeah, involvement at this level certainly helps.
Appreciate that. I'm Colin Dockstader. I'm with Realty One Group, but I work primarily for Carefree Homes. Most of my time I spend in Desert Color. That's our long-term project point right there. So we've got a couple more neighborhoods starting to come online, and then the next, so currently the main residential neighborhood in Desert Color is Auburn Hills. They are doing the excavation for the next big neighborhood, which is Sage Haven. And I encourage everyone to come out over the next few weeks. The Welcome Center at Desert Color is open, and if you guys want to get a feel for what those new communities are. They're also doing an active adult that Toll Brothers is coming in to do. We do about 500 homes. So you will start to see the supply catch up with the demand out there in terms of lot inventory. We do also have a community in Duvario, and we're closing out one in Sienna Hills. And we are working, you know, trying to find something over in that Copper Rock area that Kate was talking about. That is going to be a great opportunity where you probably will get to see land costs lower there, and some affordability could take root there, which would be nice. And connectivity with the Southern Parkway now is really pretty cool. So
Copper Rock does not want affordability.
I know, but it's where the land is.
Affordability, it's all about like costs,
Costs, you know, and it's really difficult with permit costs and land costs, you know, before you even go vertical with something to actually address what is affordable for our HOA.
Let me add into all of this, that all of this growth is dependent on us having water so we can get permits.
So we could go down that rabbit hole, talk about another rabbit hole. we could go down.
Bring it up.
Are you guys cool? Can we keep moving forward? Is there anything you want to kind of elaborate on? We can kind of jump on to the next. Jackie, you got those? Just
Yeah,
kinda
that's
where they're at?
great, thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. And Sarah, what did you bring up? Sorry, I'm coming back. Oh, you.
Oh, I just
Okay.
wanted to.
Anything else? Does anybody else have any questions? We can keep going. I have infinite amount of questions, so I'll keep asking.
So, is there any thought of going into Arizona? Is there any thought, is there?
Arizona is never gonna give up the water.
That the issue is the water.
I mean, it's hard enough to get St. George and Washington or St. George and Hurricane to work together. I mean, they work together, but Arizona is never gonna give up their water allocation to develop north of the Grand Canyon. I don't see it happening.
Except with Colorado City, that's in
Well,
Arizona.
They have their own infrastructure.
Yeah, they have their own water supply.
Which is another rabbit hole to go down, because there is some available properties coming online out there, and that's a whole community that's changing.
Yeah,
Rapidly changing.
Apple Valley.
Hey, there's a beer pub out there.
I
Probably didn't know that.
didn't know
There is,
that.
yes.
I heard it's good too.
So thinking about crossing that state boundary, there's a lot of things that have to come in play for a city to kind of be propped out of nowhere on that side of the border.
I figured there was, it was worth asking.
I just don't see the infrastructure. It's gonna be tough. I mean, you know, cane beds, you know, they go tap a well out there and they got, you know, kind of their lot, but
Yeah.
from a city perspective, it's.
So there's not gonna be a casino on the other side?
Is that the room? So let's talk about water. So I know a lot of us have attended one of the two-part water series that County Board of Realtors put on. From the building side, what do you guys think about that? What are your thoughts? Is it gonna be a challenge? Is it factoring into what you're doing right now at all?
Absolutely. I don't think in the last 5 years I've built a home with one blade of grass in it, right? So, I mean, there's things that we need to be doing to look at our use, right? We're all invested in the water. I wrote a check for $614,000 to the water district last December, right? I want to see the pipeline get brought in for long-term growth. But it's not just that, it's, Warner Valley Reservoir, it's all the other projects that they have, Washington City has, they just added a couple more wells up in, north of Greensburg still, because they have a separate water supply for anything north of the river. But yeah, water's, right now it's affordable housing might be exporting our kids, but in the future, water's gonna export the kids, so.
Are you guys seeing water cost increase affecting the price of your home? Is that something you're factoring in?
Every year it goes up $1 grand. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily set in stone. It might end up being, one day they decide, hey, from now on, it's gonna be $3 grand a year, $5 grand a year.
So I've used this analogy several times in water meetings, right? If you want truly expensive water, don't go pursue your resources, right? San Jose Water District in California, their water's going through the roof because the environmentalists aren't letting them, build new dams and do new storage facilities and things like that. It's kind of like asking a scuba diver at the bottom of the ocean how valuable that tank is on his back. Not only how much would he pay for a new tank of air, but how much would he be charged for it, right? Because the only thing that they have to really force conservation is rates. I mean, that's what's going to happen is your rates are just going to necessarily skyrocket to force conservation more so than if we went pipeline. And it's kind of interesting to me, the majority of people that are opposed to pipeline are older in age. They don't want to pay for it, or, they're like, well, we're on fixed income. We don't want to pay for it. Well, they don't need it. I don't need it. These guys don't need it. Our future generations are the ones that need it. So we have a responsibility to them so that they can have a life here in Southern Utah that we've had.
I think it all comes down to your opinion on growth. You want this town to continue to be like it has been, which it has been growing my whole life. Want it to keep growing. We'll have
Actually, if you go back in time, it's been growing forever. It's never stopped. There was like 1 year where a bunch of people went to North Dakota, but I think they're all back now. Right? For a minute.
Oh,
It does.
We could become a Boulder, Colorado, which you can't build, you can't hardly buy anything, there's no more growth there.
Except for values, real estate values, hooray, go up, and then we get a repeat and resell that
Back in
stuff.
the early 2000s, just like we were growing rapidly, and there were some city council people pushing for limitations on 3%, no more than 3%. Well, that didn't bode well for those particular council people, but there were a lot of people that imported or came here from other places, and there was this catchphrase they used called NIMBY, which meant not in my backyard. You can do whatever you want with growth, but don't build it behind me or on the side of me. And now that we're here in St. George, we don't want anybody else coming, right? And that was a crazy attitude. But then growth just naturally based on price and availability and people coming here and all that kind of stuff. And that's hard to gauge what's coming, right, in the future. So I give my hat off to you guys for risking buying land and the availability of that, what you have to pay for it, with the hope that we are going to continually grow. We just don't know what's going to happen with water. Water's a big factor. If you get the pipeline, there's no water like how to get.
A couple of points there, ongoing, you go back to the growth charts, even through 08, 09, when everything was really bad, you still had growth through that area. You just had inventory as a problem, right? Where all these second homes got done. But with water, they're gonna have to, if we don't get the pipeline, there's a lot of subsurface water down in the fields, but it's too brackish, so they may have to build a desalination plant to clean that, or further clean the water coming out of the treatment facility there to make it potable again, you know?
Pretty still desert colors water out of the ground.
We'll just pipe it out of the lawn.
I'm gonna land right into the point where if y'all have seen Dubai, and what they've done in Dubai with creating water out of no place that ever had any water, I think we're gonna be okay with water. That's my point. I was like, innovation will keep up with the pipeline, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, and it's unsolicited, obviously, but at the end of the day, if we do get the pipeline or we don't, economy will adapt to it. We're gonna adapt to the challenges that we face in the future. We're talking 10, 15, 20 years
I
down the road.
totally believe that. We'll always have water. Question is, how much is it gonna cost?
Exactly.
And the people who wanna live are gonna be willing to pay for it, to say.
It's the price of the water itself, and it's the price of the development of water.
Yeah.
You know, the pipeline is an option because it's a cheaper option for a higher yield than any of the other options,
Right.
right? But
everything will adjust. We go back into the inflation conversation that we're having with materials. So you hear on the news, they talk about like 5-6% inflation. But I'm hearing from a builder that is the biggest asset that 90% of humans have is their new home, that their increased costs are going up 40%. So inflation, depending on how you look at it, is gonna be impacted by the new build, cost to build those homes, and then the cost to support them on the back end. You see interest rates staying low because it has to absorb the impact of this cost increase. But labor, I feel like is something, another kind of go down the labor route. Feel like we just keep solving through it, or is there a light at the end of the tunnel with you guys battling? Because if they're battling labor in the restaurant business, I am sure getting a subcontractor to come out and do hard labor is impossible in the summer. Is that true?
Always gonna be a
I
battle.
get a quiet.
There's always gonna be a battle, and I think, that's one thing that's had a big impact on pricing, honestly. I mean, materials have jumped, everything's jumped, but labor's jumped also. I heard that on the radio yesterday, that Walmart distribution's hiring people for 18-25 an hour. Wow. What do you do?
Beautiful air conditioning.
You guys didn't hear that. You're just gonna sell.
Yeah, 18 bucks an hour is more than most realtors make, but that's all
I
right.
mean, they're throwing that out with health benefits and, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the big concern then, I see, is it's not so much us. I mean, it is because we're in the industry, we work, but it's our children, grandchildren, what are they gonna like? How can they afford to live here in St. George? When these prices continue
I've
to
had
go
so
up?
many clients that have tried to buy and they just can't, so they gave up. They moved away, like 5 to 10, because they're like, they wanna go to school here, they wanna have their families here, but they can't afford it, so they leave. And I think that's probably just what's gonna happen, is if the cost of living here is just gonna be so high, we're gonna be a Park City, you know?
Jeff?
Real quick on the water, who does it ultimately fall upon? The cities, the county, the Water Conservancy District takes the money. Who really is in charge of this water issue, and who does it ultimately, who's gonna make the decisions? What does the Water Conservancy District do?
So the water district is in charge of managing the water, managing the new, reservoirs and new pipes and new development. But the cities are the ones that are in charge of setting policy and setting regulations or setting ordinance,
Pays
right?
for the reservoir, all of that.
Well, we do,
Combination.
we all do. We do through
Well,
rates, we do through
yeah, you
impact
kinda-
fees, we do through property taxes.
It's, the district is in charge. Now, who's the district? Well, the members of the board of the district are the mayors of all cities. Okay, so they're elected officials. If you gotta raise the water rates, and they're not gonna raise the water rates, or they won't get reelected. So that's kind of
Well,
where you're at.
but in addition to that, like if the water district's not gonna tell the cities that they have to, restrict use. They leave it up to the cities to go ahead and set those ordinances, right? The city wants to say, okay, yeah, we wanna be like Tucson and not do grass, that's an ordinance that would come out, from the city. The district's not gonna set that. They're gonna recommend it and they're gonna push it, but they don't have legislative power. They got taxation, they got power of taxation, and they've got the power of the organization, but legislative power.
Can the county do that?
Yeah, within the areas of the county that are not controlled by the city.
Yeah.
Okay,
the
just
city-
the non, okay.
The city and city councils to have, because I've had this discussion with Zach Renson. He says, at some point, we're gonna come and tell you, you guys have to tell your people by ordinance or by directive or whatever, that they can't water their lawn.
Yeah.
You know, because the water's not there. No, not necessarily. No, that's different municipalities.
And even if you have the best elected people making the best decisions with unlimited amount of money, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. For example, with the pipeline, we still have to get approvals from federal government and Indian reservations and overcome obstacles of environmentalists trying to stop it. So even if we have a good plan, there's still outside factors that might prevent it from happening.
I have a question on a different topic. When you talked about all the land that you're future acquiring and all that, what's the security as far as the policy or the standard that you're doing for soils now, that when we go in to sell a subdivision or understand each community, is there a security level that there's no soil issues now because the development process is better and different? Or as agents, you know, historically we hear rumors of different areas that were problems and try to mitigate that, but going forward, is it all different and everything you're building is guaranteed and 100% safe, that there's no issues? Or what's changed with that, and for agents, what's the
No,
process?
there's nothing that's 100%.
Right,
And I think,
I'm obviously
the
excited.
biggest thing is getting your hand on the actual sales reports. And the cities have done a great job in the development process and forcing us really to get the reports, number one, and then follow what they're recommending. I would be a little more leery on larger lots, because when you get up to an acre, if I go out and develop an acre subdivision, I'm not gonna override the whole acre, so we can build a small house on it. So there's lots out there they're selling that still have soils issues that have to be dealt with. I don't see a lot of subdivisions going in where they're under 10,000 feet where it hasn't been dealt with, but I would definitely find out who did the soils report on the subdivision, and then get with them to get the letter that here's what we're recommending, and they'll follow it, and either it has or hasn't been done.
It's still part of the disclosure process, right?
Right.
So you guys as agents still need to help do the due diligence and say, look, go eyes wide open, there was clay that was mitigated here, or flashable soils that were mitigated here, and like you said, if nothing's perfect, you know, every few years, it seems like they come out with new ways of dealing with it, right? If it's got soils issues, I won't touch it.
I
You
would
know,
say
but-
generally it's a lot smaller issue than it used to be. Through the 90s and early 2000s, the soils engineering companies like AGC and so forth learned a lot, whether it's through lawsuits or houses falling apart. They learned a lot and have a lot higher standards for their recommendations now. Generally speaking, it's a much smaller problem like 2005 and later than it used to be. That doesn't mean it's foolproof, like these guys said, but I think it's not as prevalent.
Well, it was just 1994 that I understand that the cities mandated that you had to have a soils test for a subdivision. So anything that you sell that was built prior to 94 may not have had a soils test.
Well, like you said, the process has evolved, obviously. and
Well,
better.
even the reports have become more in-depth, because like Kate said, some AGDC lawsuits over in like Majestic really caused them to reflect on what their report looks like. And so, but I think that if you become familiar as an agent with the area, because this whole valley is so diverse in soil conditions that it's gonna change quite a bit. And as an agent, you're gonna, if you really want to provide a good service, you know, educate yourself on that, and, you know, pop in a model home and talk to agents and planning commission meetings and things like that to understand what it entails for a developer to go through the process, and help educate that kind of stuff.
I think one big thing to note would be if there were soils issues, what they did to remedy the problem. So if they took out the bad soil, if they over-Xed it and put in good soil, or if they built a home on piers. Both are possible ways to remedy the problem, but if the home's on piers, that leaves a separate set of potential problems where the home's not moving, but maybe the driveway and patios are. So just know if it had soils issues, and what they did to remedy the problem.
I just feel like there's so many new agents or agents that don't get educated and hear a lot of different problems with that. So I just think we need to constantly be reminded of the due diligence process, really, in all areas.
And clay is underneath almost everywhere in this area. Many of you probably don't know that Denver's got 60% of their soil is clay. And so they've really had to figure out ways to build on it. And it's not just, is it here, it's how deep is it? And if it's down below certain levels, then you don't have to worry about it. But if it's not, then that's the soil that's gonna move and expand. And then there's all kinds of issues. There's collapsible soils in certain places too. So I think some of the easiest things to learn, but they aren't easy, is what is blue clay? Take some classes on it, and it's basically not a pebble, it's like a platelet. And when it gets wet, it expands. And then if you're ever trying to build on farmland, it's and cultivate it for years and years, it could be collapsible soil, which means it has air bubbles in the soil and your weight's gonna collapse. So there's lots of different things there. And then learn how to deal with water and water rights. I can tell you that there's some homes in Ivans that aren't hooked up to the sewer system. You wouldn't know that unless you sold one and found out about it. Because when the sewer came in St. George, not everybody was required to hook up to it. So there's places that aren't. And I'm sure there's all kinds of these little situational problems we run into when we deal with selling homes and stuff. So do your homework so you can advise your people about it.
Questions? So, yeah, what is something that you guys feel like as realtors or industry people, what is something that you're focused on? What should we know that I haven't asked?
You know, I would just say, look for change. I mean, it's not gonna be, a lot of us kind of start focusing on when are we gonna be back to like it used to be? When are we gonna start building more homes under contract? And when are we gonna Vegas will never go back. I mean, we're not gonna go back to the way it was ever. We're just gonna keep adapting to the changes in the future. And I think as long as you're looking at how's it gonna change in the future instead of when we're gonna go back, we're not doing that. Even though these guys, I think, yeah, we'll probably turn around and start saying we'll start building a little more custom homes, but go to Vegas right now and see where you can find a builder that builds you a custom home. You can't find it. You go to Utah Valley, it just gets more and more, there's a change there wherein there's fewer builders that are building one or two houses a year, and there's more just public builders that are building bigger areas. So we have evolved. St. George has evolved, and we're getting nothing but bigger, and we're bringing in more regional builders, more public builders, and that's who we're all trying to compete with. And I think it's not going to go back to, I feel for these guys that have been building 1 to 10 houses a year because they can't go out and find a lot right now. They're struggling. And honestly, that's where our labor pool is coming from. That's where our superintendents are coming from, is these guys that know what they're doing, but they can't sell a job because there's no to it.
That's a good point. We have a lot of national builders coming, like D.R. Horton, Toll Brothers, coming to St. George. How are you guys preparing for that in your businesses? Are you seeing a more competitive edge? You're going to have to start figuring out more processes there. What's your idea on that?
Yeah, I'm moving out of residential. I mean, a guy like me, I can't go, I'm not even compete if I'm buying a lot for 300 grand in the fields. I mean, that's just obscene to me.
So when you say you're getting out of residential, what, like?
I've been doing more multifamily, more commercial. I always talk about affordable housing, now they call it attainable housing, right? But at some point, we really need to get serious about it. I mean, I get a little frustrated with some of the, school district, for example, came out with a policy, no tax incentives for housing, right? Well, if you rule out tax incentives for maybe some of these affordable products, or find a way to create some workforce housing, we're not gonna have it. Washington City just came out with a policy for accessory dwelling units. Came out and wrote this whole ordinance. You can go ahead and if your property's big enough, you can build a second property on your property without having to go through legislative process or subdivision process and all that. Well, what's that mean? That means no land costs and no permit and impact fee costs, or no impact fee costs, right? And you can build a secondary property on your own property, which would be a great way to get some affordable housing for people, but then they turned around and deed restricted the properties to only allow family members living in it. That's, what's the point of doing it? Right? You ought to, I mean, why not create a scenario where somebody can put a second residence, if they're living on site, now they've got a little rental property that helps them with their property there, or a basement apartment. You know, the way these ordinances are written, a basement apartment means you have to actually go get an R2 designation on your property and go through the public hearings and all that. Just write it into your ordinance. Now you've got somebody who can create a secondary apartment and give somebody a home.
Well,
with a young family.
you're gonna do it anyway, right?
I mean, there's
There's
literally
literally these
hundreds
rules in
of-
place that just have these gaping holes, so what's the point of having?
There's literally hundreds of properties in town that you could create a scenario where you've got some affordable housing, but they've hamstrung it, you know, because they don't like the public pushback. You know, they wrote this ordinance to give people the ability to build a secondary residence, but they're like, oh, we don't want people getting mad at us, you know, so.
Build it, you still live in it.
Yeah, just family, only family members.
How far removed? Yeah, that's my cousin, way back.
Well, they did it for, you know, mom and dad, or if they got a young, you know, son and wife or something like that. But
So you feel like affordable housing or attainable housing is a conversation that we should be talking about? That we haven't really, we touched on it.
absolutely, for all our sakes.
Yeah. Anything else?
I mean, Red Robin has no lunch menu right now, right? Because they can't get people.
Apple time is not.
Labor thing's a problem.
Outrage.
I'm gonna yell, I'll yell the labor thing until.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because Village Inn tore down their building.
No, quick car wash. It's
Yeah,
deciding to
car
build
wash.
another car wash, just in case we run it up, everybody.
So-
Quick quack on River Road.
With the current situation that we're in, and people are, you know, they're getting all these unemployments, all these checks, all this money coming in, and we have, like, so my husband works for Titan Stairs, right? He can't find people to come work for him to save his freaking life. And, I mean, it's just matters of, they come in, they're there for a couple weeks, and then they leave. So, what is gonna happen when there's no place for anybody to live, and we can't build anything, because there's nobody to build it?
The prices will go down.
You think the prices will go down?
I don't think the price is gonna go down. If you look at what happened in Park City, it wasn't by chance. It was because Park City got exposed to a huge audience of people through the other place. And this has happened to other places too. And what we just experienced through COVID was a large exposure of what St. George is as a community, why we love to live here. You know, the outdoors, the climate, the people, the culture, all of those things. We just exposed that to a really big audience of people. And that's something you can't unwind. It happened to Zion, you know, visitation to Zion was like between 1.5 and 2 million people for quite a while. And then all of a sudden, an awareness thing happened, and it exponentially grew to 4.5 million, probably pushing 5 this year, and we'll probably get to 6. That same thing is happening to this place, and I think the thing we have to look at is, are these work from home positions gonna stay? Because all of a sudden, people that couldn't, you know, afford to live and work here can now. And that's absolutely had an effect on ourselves in Desert Color. All of a sudden, we had young families that, you know, one of the primaries in the income bracket was like, hey, I can live here, and work here now. And they make way more than our typical job space, and that has definitely had an effect. It'll be interesting to see if that carries over. And then the tech ridge and the aerospace stuff, like, these things are important factors to bring to the conversation, I think, too, when you're thinking about the future.
If we continue to grow just as like a resort destination, something like a Park City or a Palm Springs or something like that, retiring a community more so than a family community, the workforce is probably just going to have to commute further, whether they're living in Bayo or Apple Valley or
Some new place.
Mesquite or wherever, they're probably going to end up commuting into town. Like, I just think when I go to Southern California to a coastal town and go into a taco shop and get a burrito, like, the people working in there, they don't live anywhere near there. They're driving like an hour to come to work.
Yes, I was. It wasn't an Applebee's, but exactly that.
That's a good follow-up question is, are there any plans for you guys to start kind of diverging in those areas? You're gonna build in Cedar, we're gonna build seed, you know.
I think we're already seeing it, like they brought up Hillbell a second ago.
Yeah.
It's already happening.
I know DR Horton's gonna go into Cedar.
Hillbell's coming right now.
Do you think there's potential for the, like the homes that are being built out of the containers, the storage containers? Has there been any talk of bringing that in? Is that so far out of the conversation?
You know what the problem is with that stuff? Like prefab construction is incredible. And if you ever have time, look up Irontown Homes in Payson. They build some really cool modular stuff. They cut down on waste. It's real efficient. The quality is just as good as anything else. But per square foot, it's more expensive than doing on site.
Okay.
And the smaller you go, so I did a project over in River connects to River Rock, the little tiny homes. And we looked at prefab and all that stuff. And ultimately, it's so much cheaper to do it on site, but as you shrink homes down, the per square foot costs just go up really high. So there's like a threshold of efficiency there on cost savings.
Where modular makes a lot of sense is any of your areas of bad dirt. Right? Turn the turnbuckles up, turn the turnbuckles down to adjust for it. So at some point, I'd like to see some of those areas get developed out with something modular.
NIMBY, not in my backyard.
What about condominiums? Steel structures converted to like homes. Texas has a ton of them and Pinterest has been
I
showing.
think they're kind of a local thing. I mean, it'd be cool to see somebody build one, but it's not gonna be done unless.
They're just
It's
like
more
pushing
suburban.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have, we've got retired people and more outdoor, I mean, that's more, you do, Texas is where you see the bulk of that, and that's more rural farm.
Second steel price, I mean.
They got a lot bigger lots out
really
there
high.
to do that.
It looks like a good idea on paper. The lumber prices were high, but now not so much.
I don't think it was even lumber prices, I think it was just the guy that has a
Just
bunch
the
of
right
horses and wants a horse in the bedroom next door. I mean, you know what I'm
It's interesting that you talk about that because tiny homes has been a big thing lately. You see people wanting to have a home of their own. Or even the RV market has gone absolutely nuts for younger people to not even worry about owning a home. And just building out a nice little overland vehicle and hit the road.
So between the,
That's a different subject, I know, but it's interesting.
so between the defund the police and the lockdowns and the COVID and the family flames of the riots and the everything else, we taught people that they can chase the quality of life and work from wherever in about 3 days, right? So you're seeing the greatest internal migration that we'll ever experience in our lifetimes in the US of people just moving around and chasing quality of life. One of my son's sister works for this tech company or a tech company. She lives in her van. She bounces from McDonald's to rest area Wi-Fi hotspot and doesn't work. Been all over the country, right? I mean, that's just, but that's a lot of what our growth down here right now is people saying, you know, pound sand, I don't need to go to, I can fly to a board meeting once a month in LA and then I can live where quality of life is a lot better.
And that's part of why I don't think the prices are gonna go down either, because as many people as we have being exported, because they are living here they have a local job and maybe it's just not working, so they have to leave. We have a lot of people, a lot of my friends, they're moving back because they've always wanted to be here, but they couldn't because the opportunity wasn't here before, or they couldn't work remotely. That all of them are moving back. Affordability is relative. They're coming from big cities and they're like going out to Desert Color where everybody here is like, pricing out there is insane. But for them, it's like, oh, that's great. I can afford this because I'm working remotely with a tech company or whatever. And the internet, I just feel like because of the quality of life that everybody's chasing, everybody's gonna keep chasing. There's no better quality of life than St. George. And so as many people as we have leaving, the opportunities like you mentioned with aerospace and different tech companies here, biotech at the hospital, I just think that pricing, I don't think it's gonna keep skyrocketing, but not go down.
I think it's a point that a lot of people overlook with the big companies like DR and Toll and some of the others coming into the area. They don't make that decision lightly. That's not just oh, hey, St. George looks nice right now. They put their data into it. They are not stupid when they make those big land purchases and those big decisions to do a massive shift to southern Utah. And I think it's naive to real estate level, it's gonna pop and prices are gonna go back to normal. It's just not happening. And with the big companies coming in, yeah, it can affect, make it a little bit more affordable in some ways. But what it also does is pushes the availability of product even more so. So the smaller builders, the tiny builders right now that we're doing 1 to 4 homes a year, they're out of business. Like they can't get product. They can't, they're not, they don't get lumber allocation. They don't get window allocation. And I think a lot of realtors don't even realize that there is that allocation happening right now, that these guys can get product because they have so many starts, they pay their bills, they take care of their subs. They've been doing that for a while, but a lot of the onesie twosies that they can't build right now.
That's the
literally
truth.
can't get stuff.
I decided to start a construction company and I'm selling my land so I can build cabins because it's less expensive. So I'm doing cabins up in Duck Creek now instead. Right, it's just.
So from a building standpoint, are you guys seeing a slowdown or not at all? Because I think the majority of us are seeing a little bit of a slowdown, the demand.
Yeah, so you're talking about two things. Some people are talking about pricing and some people are talking about availability. And I think most people would agree that pricing, although it'll always ebb and flow and dip, but overall, I don't think there's hardly anyone here that would say that pricing is going to go back to where it was. It's come up and it's probably going to stay relatively here. And then over the next 30 years, it will continue to go up as that's what real estate does. But demand is definitely going down. There's definitely more and more availability every day. A lot of that has to do with 5-6 months ago, builders in town couldn't keep up with demand, couldn't predict what their prices were going to be, and so they stopped taking orders. They kept building houses as best they could, but those homes were not pre-sold. And so we had a huge amount of demand right then, because all these people that normally would have bought a brand new home couldn't. Builders weren't selling the brand new homes. They were just going to build them and sell them when they're done. So for that 6-month build time, there was huge demand. And then now those homes are getting done and they're hitting the market. But on top of that, you've had, John mentioned, a heat wave that came through. California opened up, Disneyland's open, people can go places. So all of a sudden there's multiple factors causing less demand. And at the exact same time, we're having a large amount of inventory finally hit the market that we've all been waiting for. And so that is really equaling out a lot right now. Instead of people having to fight over homes, multiple offers, huge escalation clauses, now people can just go in and people are making offers for less than the asking price. Huh? How weird is that? So that is a very good sign.
How quickly are we all controlled, right? Like we're all conditioned to be like, oh, everybody says they over asking. I think that's over right now for a little bit, right? Is what you're saying?
That's what I feel. I mean, I'm talking general right now. But yes, people can now go and buy a property and they don't have to fight people. They're not necessarily going to be able to pick out exactly what they wanted yet, but they're not going to have to fight so hard for it. They're going to be able to find something. That doesn't mean the price is going to be less.
I think it might be helpful for you guys to say some of the other things that have been affecting your pricing, not just lumber. You mentioned garage doors. I know for one of ours, the gas company hired a new crew. The hookup for the gas went from $600 to almost $3,000 overnight.
And they switch from fuel to
HVAC.
whatever they want. But it's almost everything. Certain stucco products, drywall products, concrete, trusses, lumber, little things, the copper wire, and just like almost everything. It's a shorter list of what hasn't had a problem.
We're just going through a TP shortage that everybody went through last spring. But it's every portion of every industry.
It's just like this ripple.
Well, a sheet metal guy tell me, oh yeah, I just bought a whole box truck full of sheet metal. He says, I normally wouldn't have bought it, but I didn't know if I was gonna be able to get it, right? So it's kind of this little bit of a hoarding mentality, but I mean, because we should not have a problem getting wall boxes for electricians, right? Let's face it, any plastics company can churn those out, but
It's shipping. Shipping is apparently the problem.
shipping is part of the problem, you know.
I know that outside of Ford, full of product that hasn't been.
I know the COVID's gonna come back for an issue here, because I went to Costco over the weekend and there's no toilet paper. So you know.
I have a question about like the building out in needs. I've heard in that area, it's kind of the growth has been stopped because of not being able to find enough
That's true for Leeds.
So is there any plans of that changing in the future, or is that kind of just stop by?
They want to build a sewer treatment plant. I don't see that happen. I don't think Leeds wants to grow. So I think anything that's up there is grandfathered in. You can buy something and, you know, it's existing, but new development's not gonna happen up there without their own treatment.
So everything will just be on septic.
They changed the rules on septic too, on how much land you had to have for it, right? So you can't have a half acre lot for a septic system anymore. It's,
You
what,
have to
10
have
acres or something,
you
I
have to have
think?
5 acres minimum.
In Diamond Valley, it's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's 10 acres is the state rule.
I think you'll see some outlying communities restrict their growth by not improving their infrastructure, like Rockville has a or a stockholder water system, and they stopped issuing certificates a long time ago. And they have the ability to tie into the line for Springdale for emergency use, but they don't want to do it because they don't want it, right? And so I do think you'll see that pushback on some communities.
One thing I want to say, and I guess we're getting close to being done here, is that we appreciate you guys. The building industry is very important to realtors, and we know that I think it's a symbiotic relationship. You need us more at certain times than others. We need you. We need the new products, and we appreciate being able to sell your products and work with you. And I can tell you that the quality of construction over my span of being a realtor in St. George is just 100% better than it used to be. And the homes are better looking, and they're better and more functional.
I don't know about better looking.
Okay.
Let's not give them that.
But thank you for what you
Yeah,
do
thank
and what you are to our community, because you're a big part of why we're here and what we're doing.
Now, I selfishly was just wanting to do this just for me, so I can just ask you guys a bunch of questions, because I have like 100 more. I don't want to subject anybody else to that, or you, but I did get your guys' what should we be talking about that we haven't talked about, discussed. Is there anything else that you look out there, you say, hey, these are seems like in my industry focus that nobody's looking at?
I would say, just like Kate has mentioned, we have inventory that's coming up, and we'll be about 20 a month is what we'll have available through the end of this year for sure. Every month we'll have about 20, it's about 5 a week. So and we'll be putting on the MLS, and so get on our website and check out all the homes that are available or will be coming available. So if you have someone looking in the next month, get on our website, you can see what's coming up.
Sweet. Awesome. Anybody else? Oh,
You guys feel pressure on bigger garages and RV garages rebuilding?
Nobody ever complained about too little of a garage.
Too big.
what is your,
Too big,
what is
yeah.
your demographic? Like generally, who's the demographic that buys the products that you guys are selling? I think you guys are all a little bit
I think
different.
it's the most diverse it's ever been, right?
You're really diverse, though, I'm pretty sure, because Desert Color, you're probably catching all kinds of people, but I would say for you, what do you have a specific?
You know, we're mostly either, I'd say both of our market is from the 40s to 60s, with either 1 or 2 kids still at home, or, you know, not really a lot of younger families. Some of them, we have had a few that, like the influx, because the families are now, but most of it is second home, move up buyers.
Move up buyers.
Are you finding
And
that
local?
For us, local has just, yeah, it's been a little funky the last 6 months because of the incoming, but for the last 2 years, it's been.
Yeah, cool.
Are you finding that you're selling smaller homes, like there's more people going towards like smaller square footage of homes rather than these big giant monsters?
Um, You know, in our market, we're not necessarily us. These two developments we're doing, one in Desert Cliffs and one over in Riverbend, off of Dam Road. Those are gonna be a little smaller, but our small, I think the smallest plan we're offering right now is almost 1,800 feet, 1,789. I mean, that's why I feel like we're a great mix with ants when we get into an area. You know, they've got their niche, we've got ours.
And
it's just been a great work.
John, what would you say yours is?
Yeah, our
You got a
buyers-
lot, and you're all over the place.
Yeah, it depends on which area, but mostly like 50 to 70 on our age group. But again, it depends on the area.
Kate,
and the
I'm
price point.
curious on your project, being that it was townhomes a little bit further out of town, what the majority of people were out there.
So I primarily deal with 2 product types. With the townhome product type, it is mainly locals, either getting into their first home or maybe move up home, like a really young family, little tiny kids or no kids. And we had just a couple retirees, but very few, mostly like young couples. And then.
We have tons of kids. I live in that subdivision, tons of kids. Everybody's got a kid in that place.
In the other product I deal with, it's mainly single family homes on smaller lots ranging from like 1,800 square feet to 2,500 square feet. And those homes are almost completely retirees and almost all moving into town from out of state or northern Utah. Retirees looking here to just retire.
40%, I think, of our population roughly is retirees, right? It's still like our big segment of the community.
Yeah, I've almost don't deal anything with like families, bigger homes, you know, like 3,000 to 5,000 square foot homes, nothing, I don't do anything with that really. And very few second homes these days.
Yeah. Are you getting from out of town or local?
A lot of Salt Lake, northern Utah, you know, like the whole Provo to Ogden corridor, and then some move ups locally. And then California, and we've seen quite a few from the Pacific Northwest too, which makes sense why they want out of there.
Trade the rain for the sun. It's a pretty easy one.
I have an interesting question for John.
So I wanted Kate to moderate. If I could have just had Kate ask them all the questions, it would have been way better.
I got an interesting question for John. So I know back when I worked for Ents Homes, quite a large percentage of sales were for second homes. And a lot of them were just northern Utahns that wanted to have a place to come vacation to. But that was back in the days before nightly rentals was a thing in southern Utah. In my opinion, it almost seems like these people that used to get a second home now are looking at getting like a vacation home, like a nightly rental zoned home. Have you had any change that you've noticed in your number of homes sold that are second homes?
Yeah, definitely. Second homes has gone down. We're still seeing quite a bit.
But it has gone down?
Yeah, it's gone
That's
down.
an interesting
I think the
observation.
second home purchases are like, obviously does it color the amenity thing, just driving them. Because they don't necessarily want a vacation rental because of the market on it and the limited availability, but the amenities are like, hey, where can I buy a second home with some amenities so that if family and kids are visiting, they've got that.
Are you adjusting to that with the?
Well, most of our second home buyers are getting ready and prepared to retire. So that's where they're like 2 or 3 years out. And so they're buying a second home so they can have it ready to go. Yeah. We don't see hardly any that are like, yeah, let's buy this home and we're going to use that as a second home.
Back to that 50 to 70 age price, you know, age bracket. Cool.
I just had a question, like, I am actually doing a business for second homes of essentially allowing people to come in and purchase a home together as their second homes. And going back to that of like amenities and things like that, are some of these newer subdivisions that you're doing, will there be pickleball courts, pools, things like that, that will be for the community themselves?
Or does the buyer not want that, right? As a new build, right? What is it that they want? Do they want amenity?
For us, we try to have one community that has a pool, pickleball courts. So we do have that right now. It's getting to the end in Little Valley. We have only a few lots left or homes left. But yeah, it seems like Desert Colors is kind of where everyone's going. If that's like the amenity is what they want. Frio as well.
You'll still have those restrictions though on the vacation rental.
So I actually live in heavier restrictions on vacation.
Yeah, that's what I was, right.
So I actually live in a vacation rental neighborhood, and, you know, it's probably 50% of the people that buy in there don't have any intention of ever renting, they just buy it because they have options, right? And then, but they're second homes, yeah, amenities is the other portion of it, a lot of them are second homes. We've had a few of them buy under an LLC, you know, back to what you're doing, a couple of them will get together and just buy it in an LLC that they put together. I like it because they're vacant 80% of the time, I don't have any neighbors, right? So it actually doesn't bother me. Even if the weekends, you know, you get people out biking and skating and playing and things like that. During the week, it's nice and quiet, so.
The cities have come a long ways, putting in nicer parks, and yeah, we wonder about the impact fees, but they're doing a great job with the parks, with the infrastructure, so that
you don't have to
We
pair
don't
them.
have to put them in our neighborhood.
Yes, the Shooting Star's got a great park down there, and it's an amenity to all your people, but it's all
It's a city park.
city park.
Right.
And yeah, the developer paid for it up front, but it's still a city park and we don't have to maintain it.
If I'm developing multifamily, where they're already gonna have to have an HOA and share costs for buildings and landscaping and things, then yeah, we'll put in some amenities. Not like elaborate, but
Yeah.
simple, but for the single family stuff I do, no, we'll try to keep the HOA to 0 or very low, and then they can just use nearby parks and not have a focus on amenities.
Well, I think it's important for these communities and vacation rentals because, people like me that live in a single family neighborhood don't want multi-family people in the neighborhood. I mean, it's okay, I guess, if it's just a mom and a pop and some kids, but once the kids get adults, it's no longer a single family, they're adult people living in their parents' houses, and we've had a lot of that abuse in our neighborhood. I just don't like it, and I think there's a place for it.
So we in Washington created the ordinance for, if you have a house in a neighborhood and you wanted to put a vacation rental, and you gotta get like a percent of your neighbors within 500 feet have to approve it. I mean, it's just written in such a way that it's not gonna happen in an existing neighborhood. And the new neighborhoods that came in and said, hey, we want vacation rental, at least when I was on, was, okay, how are you mitigating your impact to your adjoining neighborhoods, right? How are you providing additional parking for folks and ATV trailers and guests and things like that? One, not to knock on Desert Color, but I think they don't have enough parking.
Oh, they're gonna, the next phase is add more.
Well, that's the thing, we looked at it and you go over to Sienna Hill, all of that vacation rental, they've got areas for additional parking and we made sure that was like a big deal, you're having to change course, it sounds like on that one, because when you do that, they come down and they'll bring multiple families to stay in one house, and you gotta make sure you plan for it. So we just said, if you want vacation rental, how are you gonna accommodate your guests, right? And how are you gonna mitigate the impact of the people surrounding you? And then my thing always was, if you wanna play hotel, run it through one management company, that kind of deviated from that now, but I always just figured, if you wanna play hotel in your neighborhood, that's okay, but give me a front desk.
Yeah.
Right, I don't want neighbors calling neighbors if somebody's partying, I don't want them calling 911, I want them calling front desk.
We're gonna wrap it up. Thanks for coming, guys. Thank you guys so much.